And I want to thank all of you who have come to our discussion today. In addition to the details we provided in our landing page for the registration, we've also added something to additionally talk about our haste this morning. Because it wasn't enough that Microsoft dropped all of these other updates. Guess what? We now have a new one that arrived on Monday, that being the Windows 10 April 2018 update. So we're going to speak about 2019. We're going to speak about that. We're going to speak about our readiness and our recommendations, and then provide you all in the handout, which I hope you've downloaded, a number of links that we've sort of handpicked to help you on your familiarization of all that is new. So as again, reminder, put your questions in the chat. We're going to write those up, the answers up, and provide it as an additional handout if we don't have time. So let's talk first about what's in 2019, what's important, what's new, and oh, by the way, what's actually old about it. So the first thing that you need to know about Office 2019 is that it is a one-time purchase. It is essentially a perpetual license. This comes with a number of conditions. Among them, there will only be 5 years mainstream support, as contrasted to what we currently generally have, and that is a total of 10 when you add the mainstream with the extended support for a deployed version. We now have 7 years total in 2019, whereas previously we've had a decade. So this is clearly indicating that Microsoft is on that path to roll up the carpet behind us and make certain that we keep things moving forward. And they're not going to support this version beyond those 5 years of mainstream support and the 2 years of extended support. The other thing you need to know about Office 2019, and this is whether you intend to look at this thing or you are already on a kind of click to run deployment, or an MSI deployment, I should say, is that the client apps for Office 2019 are only installable as click to run. There is no additional MSI packaging being made, with the exception on the server. We'll talk about that in a second. All the client apps will always be deployed, number one, to Windows 10 only, and as a click to run deployment only. So these are critical factors of information for all of you, no matter where you are in this cycle. The second thing that is a key concept for you in IT is that the Office 2019 release is almost like a snapshot of of a subset, a meaningful subset of functionality introduced into Office 365, which is why when we go through the list in a minute, it's going to sound familiar to you if you're already there. But it's a meaningful subset of Office 365 functionality. But if you deploy Office 2019 or look at it or are considering it, understand you will get security updates only. There are no additional new features being provided in Office 2019. Additionally, no new functionality updates in 2016 either if you've deployed MSI. So the idea here is that we're not going to get feature updates as we have over the course of the last 2 cycles. And finally, and this one I'm going to admit just sort of caught me by surprise, and that is the fact that with the release of 2019, OneNote will no longer be deployed as a quote unquote, traditional client app. Instead, what is going to happen is we move OneNote to the default of Windows 10's application user experience. So some of you might have heard of the Windows 10 Universal apps. They're the ones that are on that by default. OneNote will no longer be an application with the suite per se. It's going to be a component of the desktop now, the Windows OS. So I do want to make sure you know that and understand that there's some references and resources. So here's what you get in the preview. Essentially, you get everything, including Project and Visio. So there is in the preview, again, a click to run install. There is all of the traditional client-side apps plus Project plus Visio. Do know that OneNote is going to be Windows 10. So again, as a requirement, you have to have Windows 10. So that's how you're going to inherit OneNote. What you need to know also is that when Office 2019 is actually officially released, the client apps will be, again, the same as what you see there. There will also be, however, the companion server applications, Exchange, SharePoint, Project Server, Skype for Business Server. All of those will be accompanying as well. But the little thing to know about the server apps is that they will install as MSIs, whereas all of the client apps will only install as click to run. Now, what exactly is new in Office 2019? Or rather, it's old news if you were in 365. Per application, these are the highlights. The fact that there has been in PowerPoint a number of functionalities that allow you to zoom in and morph. We have a tremendous amount of pen and ink enhancements really across the whole of Office. But again, if you're in Office 365, you've seen these things already. In Excel, there have been significant enhancements to the integrations between Power Pivot, Power Query, publishing to Power BI. There's new connectors, new functions, new charts, actually kind of cool charts. But again, you've seen them if you've been in Office 365. In Outlook, there are the ability now to do @ mentions. There's the focused inbox, Office 365 groups, and updated contact cards. So again, all things we've enjoyed for a number of months now. In Word, I think one of the biggest set of improvements that we're going to see in Word have to deal with accessibility and being able to have more audio within that application. So we have now a text-to-speech feature. You can have Word read to you out loud. In addition, there's been a serious investment in learning tools. So when a new feature was introduced, we would see these learning tool captions. They're beyond a super tip. They're almost like, here's the feature, here's what's new, and you get an audio description of it as well. So as I said, Word talks to you now. If you want to check out this entire list, I've listed the link at the bottom of this slide. And again, it's in the handout. Now, how you participate in this commercial preview program, and I'm going to later tell you all a bit about how you can, or why you would participate. For some of you, it may not be as important. For others, it might be. We'll give you those criteria, but there is a process you need to follow. And number one, you have to be a registered user and a global admin in order to register under Microsoft Collaborate. This was the old MS Connect site, which they've done away with last year, or earlier in this year, I should say. And so this is how we're going to get that information. Then you sign up for the engagement, as they call it, and that is right here. And what will happen is you can download from that engagement because this will be one that's available to you. Obviously, there's other things that you can find here, but this is how you're going to get the preview. You also will use the dashboard within Collaborate to submit your feedback. So that's pretty important to know too. Now, one of the important Office 365 updates, so we've kind of completed our 2019 discussion, but something that is really crucial for all of you to know, particularly those who are on Lync or Skype for Business, what Microsoft had announced is that they're bringing Skype for Business within Microsoft Teams. And all along, we have been administering Teams through our Office 365 Admin Center. But very shortly, at a dashboard near you, the Admin Center, there will be a whole separate Admin Center now dedicated to managing Microsoft Teams and Skype for Business. There is a bit of a transition, a bit of a migration, and how they are going to migrate settings, for those of you who are in this particular boat, they're going to migrate the settings in sections. They're going to first do messaging, then meetings, then calls, and then aspects of the Teams client. There is a fantastic Transition Insights article, which I've also referenced, so I would wish for you to pay attention to that. Also know that, again, they began rolling it out at the beginning of March, and many customers haven't yet seen it. But again, do know that that is coming. Now, this was the really late breaking ad. This happened just on Monday, April 30th. And what this is this is the Redstone 4 Windows update that we've all been hearing about for a bit. What you're going to find in this are some end user capabilities that are quite nice. Being able to see our files in a timeline, being able to share nearby. I think one of the really nice ones is the Focus Assist, which was formerly known as Quiet Hours. Focus Assist allows us to turn off particular applications, even turn off particular people, or rather, I should even point out maybe turn on. So for example, if you turn off all of your notifications for email or all of your notifications for chat, but you want one person to always pop through or a couple people to pop through, you can do that with Focus Assist. Long awaited are massive changes to Microsoft Edge. And so these are particularly exciting, along with some dictation features. But I think that where the people who win big time on Windows 10 and this particular update are the IT folks. There are ways to optimize delivery so it's not everything coming down from the network. There are ways to gather analytics so you know essentially what's going on. There's an entire kind of representation of Windows 10's desktop where you can set up a kiosk browser. So I think about when we walk into firms and they've got a little PowerPoint running. You can also deploy using Intune. There's a Windows autopilot, and there is an entirely new set of settings that you can get to from the admin center, admin.microsoft.com. Finally, really critical and crucial and especially timely for those who have joined us today from outside the US, the GDPR center within Security and Compliance Center is really notable as well, being able to control where your data is using multiple geo capabilities. So making certain that your data is in one spot and not another. There's also a number of advanced data governance tools. So again, this is a really highly anticipated version of the Windows 10 updates. Now, what we've got here is what I might say is the sort of heart of the matter. What are what's the readiness from Latera Microsystems on its products, as well what might be our recommendations as you try to sort of have your decision making, right? What decision making you need to do in order to conclude, what parts of this do we take on and what parts of this do we maybe defer? How exactly do I go about that process of determining now what I should be doing? So let's start with what our products are in terms of readiness. So one of the really critical shifting sands, as I refer to it, of IT is the recognition that what we need to be deploying is 64-bit Office, whatever version, if it's 2016, if it's 365, if it's 2019, what we really need to be deploying is 64-bit Office. Now, all of Latera Microsystems products are 64-bit Office enabled with the caveat of the Change Pro clipboard comparison, which is currently in the development queue. And they're working on that. Whether it comes at the tail of Q2 or beginning of Q3 is the part we're not aware of right at this moment. However, all of our other Latera Microsystems products are indeed 64-bit enabled. What you should also know is that at the present time, we have no known conflicts distributing Latera Microsystems add-ins using click-to-run deployments. Because one of the bellwethers of Office 2019, I hope you all kind of picked up on it, is that the 2016 MSI is the very last one. we will not be able to deploy using an MSI going forward, and that click to run is the deployment method we're all, sort of heading toward. And so again, that becomes a critical component for you all in your planning and understanding our products and their readiness for this new world. As far as 2019 readiness goes, keep in mind that right now it is in preview. So anyone testing with the 2019 preview can get a kind of early sense of how things will work or won't work. But what you need to really keep in mind is that when it is generally available, the GA release, we will have all of our products ready within 30 days of that general availability release of 2019 Microsoft Office. So just keep that in mind. Okay, so let's now go on to what exactly are the criteria for my decision making. I think everyone around 64-bit is looking at Microsoft Outlook as the big pivot point. Those who deployed with Office 2016 and 32-bit recognize that there are challenges in performance, in screen whiteout, in stability in many cases. Unless they ran 64-bit, there was not really and hasn't been just yet a way to clear that up. So 64-bit is absolutely a critical decision factor for all of you and your add-ins and related applications. Another aspect that is a critical decision-making point is your current licensing. What kind of licensing do you have? What kind of licensing is expiring? What sort of outlay of cash do you need to make for purchasing something such as a perpetual license? So I think licensing and cost is another critical factor. And for each of you, these, the licensing question and answer is going to be unique. Whereas 64-bit, I think it's pretty universal. In terms of timing, are there other activities going on within your project lists that indicate you need to do this now, or you have a little bit of leeway, maybe a 5 to 6 month, bridge where you could kind of change your course and realize something that is certainly much more current. And then your tolerance and or requirements for the cloud or for mobile. Because obviously, if you need cloud and mobile, you really need to go the route of an Office 365 licensing and deployment structure. So with that, let me move into our very, wow, it's very text riddled, isn't it? But we were trying very hard to just get the facts down on paper. We'll try to make this a little more visually consumable, but in the meanwhile, this is what we have. Remember, this is very late breaking. So let's assume that right now your project into the next desktop, Windows 10, Office 2016, going via MSI, is already in flight. You're already at the point of user authorization testing. You're already at the point of piloting. You might already be in the middle of deployment. For some of you, I know that's where you are. Basically, the recommendation is really stay the course. The only thing that you might consider will come up in just a second. I'll reference it. So just stay the course because you are not out of date. You're not current. You should just stay the course. Now, if you are already deployed with Office 2016 as an MSI, what you need or want to do is to test drive Click to Run, in which case one of the recommendations might be test a sandbox. Build a sandbox with Office 2019 preview, 64-bit, Click to Run, and get your feet wet, because somewhere in your future is likely the interest at building a Click to Run deployment structure. So it's a really good way you could use Office 2019 preview is to test out and build a sandbox with Click to Run deployment. Now, if your project is in a planning phase, so where you are is you're sitting in, say, Office 2010, or you're in Office 2013. Maybe you're still in Windows 7. Your project in a planning phase, what we know is you're going to have to go to Windows 10 And you may have already declared that you were going to do 2016 32-bit as an MSI. Depending on your licensing, you might want to seriously reconsider that. Again, 64-bit has become such an important choice. And secondly, since we know this is end of the road for the MSI deployments, maybe you should seriously reconsider that too and build your click to run deployment so that you can take advantage or at least have a little bit of flexibility or hedge your bets, let's say, on whether or not you can take on a 2019 or Office 365, I guess it would be for you, an Office 365 deployment with click to run. Now, if your licensing is in a situation where you're sort of shade of green, you know, the costs are that you need to repurchase, and you really need a per device licensing model, and you're good with just getting security updates and a kind of snapshot in current time of functionality, then Office 2019 Preview is probably your target. You'll preview with Office 2019 Preview. What you'll do is you might consider purchasing those licenses for deployment. If you're ready for the cloud, if you want mobile, if you always want to keep your functionality current, and that's what your users have been requesting, and that's what your clients have been asking of you, then Office 365, 64-bit Office, and click to run is really your model based on Windows 10. Pretty straightforward there. Now, the question that of course comes to mind in all of this, back to our little box of timing, is when is it that Office 2019 will be officially released? And it is in the second half of 2018. So if you think about that, it was the 27th of April that they built and provided us with the preview. So now we could be as much as what? It could be October, November, December. It could be as early as maybe September. It is not at the present time. There's not an accurate date to reflect, but it's definitely confirmed that it will be the second half of this year. Then what about the release of the 2019 server-side apps, and when is that coming? The only reported details on that for Exchange 2019, for Project Server 2019, for SharePoint Server 2019, the only report that we have, the only confirmation that we have is that it will be over the next few months. But remember what they also said, that when Office 2019 is generally available, they will at that time also companion it with all the server-side apps. So I hope some of that gives you some food for thought, raises some questions. Again, you can, you know, on the handout, this slide is represented there. So again, just to kind of think it through. Now,
Sherry, before we move on to the roundup,
yes.
One of our participants, Jay Perek from Netrix, put in the question, that wasn't a question, but I think a valuable bit of information. He informs us that the new version of SCCM/Microsoft Configuration Manager now has fully built-in click-to-run package creation and management. So it's nice to see Microsoft staying in step there, and thanks, Jay, for that extra bit of information.
Thank you so much, Jay. This was actually a very important question, right? Because if you also have to rebuild your whole infrastructure for something like that, and there's not anywhere to go, it is very good that they've made that up to date and aligned with all the recommendations they're making. Now, one thing that I have done here, Joy, is to create what is a fully linked table. I was trying to organize this because it's obviously very interrelated. What exactly is the 2019 release? For many of you, I think it's a bellwether of choices you need to make, even if 2019 isn't the route you're going. It's a bellwether. It says if you were on the fence about click to run, I wouldn't be. If you were on the fence about 64-bit, I wouldn't be. And then I kind of categorize them by aspects of Windows 10. Most of these resources, I do want to point out, are off of Microsoft sites. However, the Windows 10 version 1803 and the 10 best new features are absolutely things published by external parties or external partners. And I just found them so valuable for that kind of quick familiarization that I put them in here. Let me think if there's any other aspect here. Yes. Again, for those of you who are in really any stage and or have Skype for Business or Link, I highly, highly encourage you to take a look at the transition article, the announcement articles about the new admin center for Skype for Business, and at the same time, the companion document that has been published about the roadmap of bringing those features from Skype for Business into Teams, because they're not all there now. One other thing, really important, OneNote. OneNote for Windows 10, that app is not yet with parity to the desktop version of OneNote 2016. So that article tells you about how you can run the two things side by side, so you don't eliminate 2016. But I really would encourage you to read the FAQ on OneNote 2019. Again, whether you're going there or you're not, you need to understand what the future plan is. So I hope this roundup of references is useful. And now we've hit the Q&A session.
Yeah, so just as a reminder, download the handout. If you have any questions, please enter them in the question interface and go to webinar. And while you're devising your questions, Sherry, I have one for you.
Yes.
If our participants could only walk away with 3 nuggets, only 3 things, what would they be?
64-bit, investment in click to run, whether that's knowledge or building a sandbox. Oh man, it's a toss-up. I think it would have to be Windows 10 simply because it's so fundamental. But for the applications folks, Joy, honestly, Teams, Skype for Business, and OneNote. Not possibly in that order. That wasn't 3. I know that wasn't 3.
So we had one question, but 3 works, and I might even slip one in my own at the end. We do have one question: is how do you see click to run affecting firm-wide deployments of Microsoft Office?
Well, affecting, I would say that it affects the IT team as they build it. It's a different deployment sort of strategy. I think the other aspect is, depending again on what you're deploying click to run, how the updates get out there and how often. So again, I think the implication is really in terms of testing, and I think it's really in terms of the IT side for the users. Obviously, they want to consume the latest, but again, it's for the IT team. That's the impact I see.
Well, we have no other questions in the box right now, and we're kind of getting to the end of our time, but I do have a couple of final comments. I have to say that when you were talking about Office talking to us and Word talking to us, it just feels like back in the back, Google and Alexa are impacting Microsoft's strategy. But unfortunately, the image I kept getting in my head is Clippy, for those of you who have been around Office a long time and what his voice might sound like. But honestly, one of my big takeaways from this is it has to do with analytics. Sherry mentioned it a couple of times. She talked about Power BI. I cannot stress the importance that Power BI needs to begin to take in your environment. It's going to become an essential tool. It's going to be the front end to a lot of things we're doing Microsoft. And I believe that just as we started talking about SQL in the early days or SharePoint in the early days, Power BI is kind of the hidden piece here that I think you need to master. We do have a couple of more questions that have slipped in, Sherry, even though we're right at the top of the hour. So if anyone can't stay with us, we understand, and we will make these available. But Sherry and I have just a couple more minutes, so we'll try to answer these questions for you. The first one is, security is a big issue for IT. How does Click to Run allow us to know what's getting deployed?
So again, part of the actually, this is kind of interesting because, Joy, one of the things I was going to amend to your Power BI comment is security. That analytics have been wrapped all around their handling of security and compliance as well. I think for this question, though, click to run and affecting security, I'm really sorry, I may not have an answer, but I will find that out. But again, just security in general is woven throughout the capabilities added to Windows 10 and the capabilities added within accessible from within Office 365 as well. We'll get an answer, Joy. I don't know it.
Yep, no problem. We will track it down for folks. And we just had a lot of nice thank yous coming in. So thank you, everybody. So we're, as I said, right at the top of our time. Sherry, fantastic presentation. Time, very timely. Thank you for that. We thank all of you who spent time with us today participating. And of course, we thank you for, most of all, for being Latera Microsystems customers. We hope to meet you in person or reconnect with you one day soon. And if you should wish to join us for future industry insights and other virtual events or in-person events, please go to www.latera.com, about us and events, to see what's coming either virtually or near you. And again, thanks to everybody, and have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye now.
Thank you. Thank you, Joy. Thank you.